Good afternoon. I'm pleased to welcome you all to a panel related to the exhibition titled Abundance and Scarcity Exploring Ladakh's Sustainable Ingenuity, curated by Sandeep Sangaru and supported by Royal Enfield. If you haven't already visited, I hope you have a chance to see the exhibition, which is being showcased at Samba Square. With this conversation, we bring together experts to discuss the documentation of indigenous tribes, the ingenuity of vernacular architecture, the evolution of Ladakhi fashion, and more. Today we have Faiza Khan, founder Field Architects, Sarvana Kumar, founder India in Motion, Jigmat Couture, Rigzin Wangmo Lachek, founder Dholkar, and Ikshat Pandey, CSR Corporate Brand Strategy Lead, Royal Enfield. The panel is moderated by Monisha Ahmed, an independent researcher whose work focuses on art practices and material culture in Ladakh. She is the co-founder of the Ladakh Arts and Media Organization, a non-government organization that works with the arts in Ladakh. Over to you, Monisha.
Thank you, Amisha, and thank you everyone for being here this morning. Can we start with the first slide, please? So I wanted to begin with an image of Ladakh that may be well known to all of us, or not to some of us who haven't been to the region, and to sort of question the title of the exhibition and also of this panel discussion, which is Abundance and Scarcity. And apart from Sandeep, who has curated the panel, who's sitting here, and five panelists here to take part, we also have in the panel Chamspa, who is sitting here with us, and Rigzin, who's also here. And who's not here? Gaurav. Yeah, he's the only person not here. So I was going to show you an image of the exhibit, but I think I will leave you in suspense if you haven't been there, and you should go and visit. So this is actually, in the distance, the green patch that you see is the town of Leh. And all around Leh, you can see the high barren mountains. Ladakh is located in the Himalayan and Karakoram ranges. And quite often, people look at a place like Ladakh and say, it's so bare, it's so barren. How do people live here? How do they, where do they get their food from? Where do they get the resources to build their homes from? Is it really that scarce? For me, having, I think, been in Ladakh now for close to 4 decades, I don't think I ever felt scarcity. I think, on the contrary, I probably felt, there was always plenty. And there was always plenty because you had to know how to extract it. The Ladakhis are also, they're ingenious. They have their techniques, they have their methods, they have their ways. And a lot of these practices have been passed on for generations. Let's take irrigation. If you look at Leh in the distance, you'll see there's one little patch of green. But that patch of green is there because there is a well thought out system of controlling the water. You have what's called in Ladakh, you have water lords, and they share and divide the water between people through their irrigation channels, so that everyone gets the equal amount of water in their fields, and also so that there are no fights in between people for water. So that's just one resourcefulness. People look at the plains of Changthang, the next slide, and all they see is, again, barren land. But on that barren land are grown a huge variety of grasses. And it's those grasses that sustain the sheep, the pashmina goats, the yaks, the horses, and the nomadic pastoralists who live on this land. It's said that there are so many varieties of grasses available on the Changthang, and that's one of the reasons also why Ladakh has some of the best quality pashmina in the world. So that's another reason for looking, what is there in Ladakh in terms of resources. Can we have the next slide? When you see Ladakh, as a place, and you see the different kinds of communities who live there. We mainly have nomadic pastoralists in the eastern region, sort of northern and eastern region, and we have agriculturists in the sort of western and southern region, and that's also because of the way the lay of the land is. I mean, if you start going higher in Ladakh, like over 13,000 14,000 feet, it's very hard to grow crops at that altitude, but at the same time that altitude sustains livestock. If you go lower down in altitude, you have rich fertile land, and you can grow a huge number of variety of crops. Can we have the next slide? I just take one example, and that is textiles. So, because we have livestock in Changthang, a lot of people make use of the local wool and pashmina and yak wool that's available in these areas. But also at the same time, this has also been a land that has been characterized as being on the crossroads of High Asia. So, you had multiple trade routes that came through here from Russia, from Tibet, from the plains of India, from places like Varanasi or Punjab or Kashmir. You had trade with Iran, Afghanistan, and further on, maybe even into Italy. So it was a place where trade also played such a big part in bringing material goods into the region. Next. And just to show you sort of some of the different kinds of crafts that are done, whether it's woodwork, mask making, painting, jewelry, stupa building, weaving, and some of these you will also see in the exhibition. How people have in Ladakh have looked at the sort of traditions of the past, and then how they have used them in the present context. Next. Just to end with a few examples of a robe that's made in Ladakh, sort of carpets that have come in from Xinjiang, jewelry pieces that also came in through trade, metalware that came in either from Kashmir or Xinjiang, and a stone pot that's made in Ladakh. So just to leave you with some thoughts before we go on to hear the panelists speak. Our first presentation is from Jigmit Kotier. And can we start Jigmit's film, please? Could we start with Jigmit's slides, please? Go back to the. No, can we go back to the PPT? And go in the next, not that one, the next one. Yeah. No, can we start with Jigmit's slides? Yeah, that one. Thank you.
Hello, Jule. Jule is a greeting in Ladakhi. So, Jule, everyone, and thank you, SF, for having me here. My name is Jigmit. Me and my wife, another Jigmit, we run this fashion house called Jigmit Kutyar. We started our venture back in 2010 along with few artisans. Back in 2000, Ladakh wasn't Ladakh what you see as of now. So things have really changed over the period of time. There was very less of a tourist, and there was very less of a scope in terms of making any kind of business as such industry. There's no industrial atmosphere. But we were fashion graduate. My wife also spent some time in industry. Even I was working with like within mass fashion industry for some time. Almost I spent a decade in industry. So in 2010 we thought, okay, let's try. Let's go back. Let's give a chance at least once. If it work well, good. Otherwise, we can always come back to a multinational company job. 2010 we winded up everything all together. Been gone back to Ladakh. So we started looking for what possibility, because like we have to, at the end of the day, for fashion people, like, and that too spending time in mass fashion, fast fashion. So we will always tend to look at how things will sell fast, how you will like actually scale it up fast. But like we choose to really start it very slow, though we were given a chance and proposal by administration also, because to really for instance in Ladakh there's lots of defense personalities, lots of schools also, all their uniforms and everything used to come from outside Ladakh. So they were having an idea that why don't you put up 1,000 machine all together, we'll provide you land, we'll give you capital and everything all together. But that wasn't actually coming into my mind. And then like we spent our childhood in Ladakh. We when we used to go to like schools, now what you see stream coming from like Khardongla Pass towards Leh City, we used to drink it straight away from that stream. So it was so clear. So as you all know that fashion is most polluting, second largest polluting landfill in terms of everything, like it pollutes a lot. So we thought, I don't know to really like go into that like mass scale production and all. So rather we will have some story, beautiful story. Sustainability at that point of time was like very less talked by people. In fact, ethically and all was very like alien word to like rest of people. So we thought, okay, let's try with like one store, and then we will explore with our own textile. What we can do is like, okay, we'll focus for our bread and butter. We'll do a wedding also, because there wasn't any choice of wedding attire that can be nice way to really like have a parallel profitable business. So that way we started. And later it wasn't that easy also, because to really introduce this is all about natural, this is all about like how ethically we produce things and all, to really educate even local client to the tourists coming to like Ladakh. But slowly and gradually people started like understanding it.
Sorry. You wrap up, then we go to the next speaker.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, I'll just make it a little brief and then it'll be okay.
Say what you have today in the shop.
Now we have couple of stores. Now we are all together, whole ecosystem under one roof. Basically, when we started, it was just like one garmenting industry. So slowly, like we started putting right from farm to fashion, what you call like it's right. I do buy my resources directly from Changtang people, unlike like everyone cannot afford to have machines and everything there in Ladakh. So it's quite like investment. So like being me like starting from very being pioneering, like I do understood that, like designing actually starts from the fiber stage itself. If you have got, like a fiber control, then you can do wonder with, like that. I'll come later if somebody asks me a question how and all. So whole ecosystem we have kept it under one roof. So we now deal from right from fiber till retail. So that's all about it. And now beside that, we are running few projects also. One important project is Textile Museum of Ladakh. So I do wish, like initially when we were researching in terms of Ladakhi textile, there was only Dr. Monishali's book only, Living Fabric. That was source of inspiration for us. That was only, documented, I think, like books or paper. So we thought, like why not, come up with a small resource center and a museum so that one can actually study, understand things and go into deeper meaning. So that's all about my projects and my industry. This what you see on slides is basically I do one collection in a year. Mass fashion nowadays, even like month in my 1 month they have one collection. So I prefer making it one collection 1 year, very nicely done, something to do with my own culture, thoroughly researched, documented also. So this is the latest one, what we call Nachung. So most of my collection is all about revival. So once Ladakh, again, like I'm just dragging it a little bit. So once in Ladakh, unmarried girl, teenage people, they used to wear this kind of, like costume. Though it looks very beautiful, but I don't know how come, like they started wearing, like some other form of, silhouettes. So that's about me.
Okay, hi, I'm Faiza from Field Architects. Okay, so briefly, first, should I talk about the slides or I'll just introduce the practice? Okay, so first, you can keep the same slide. Okay. So me and Suril, my partner, we started Field Architects in 2017, but it wasn't something that we decided that we wanted to start a practice in Ladakh. So how it came about is an interesting story. We had practiced in Bombay, China, Ahmedabad, and done international national projects for about 10 years. And then with architecture practice, it's not something like I want to open a shop and the clients will walk in. And what is the pedagogy of the practice? So what we started doing is like, why don't we travel across India and then we see where it leads. And we were open to just covering up our living expense and just working, and just the idea was just going across the whole length. So Suril had been to Ladakh and I had not been to Ladakh. So our first option was Northeast or Ladakh. But since I had not been, I was like, let's go to Ladakh. We went to Ladakh. In a week, we met a couple of people who are still our friends. And they said, why don't you go to Sec Mall? Over there, they do some kind of construction. And we went in, and the architect over there who had worked for a couple of months was just leaving. And as we entered, we met Sonam Wangchuk, and he's like, you know what, guys, we are looking for architects who can teach our solar and passive course for Ladakhi students for 2 years, and also you can work on the building design and construction here. So we looked at each other and we were like, okay, that's it, let's commit for 2 years. So what started as the commitment, I think it's still binding us now. And to see our journey from here, it's been about 9.5 years in Ladakh. It's been great. The practice, what we try to do is we try to reconstruct indigenous built forms, understanding vernacular architecture, and then trying to also meet the aspirations of the people we are working with currently. And so it started with 2 of us, then we had few colleagues who joined us, and now we also have an in-house carpentry, masons, so it's like a design and build practice, which it has evolved into. And okay, so now briefly I'll talk about this project. This is last year we completed a headquarters of Achi Association India. It's a conservation NGO based in Ladakh. This is in Pei village, where you see it's so Pei village earlier had only 11 families. And then these are the old houses which are currently abandoned and in ruined form because the families moved out. And we try to conserve this house, which is called the Pale house. And soon the idea is to convert the whole precinct into an art or a craft area where we can have a lot of like-minded people coming there. Next. This is a close-up We also try to work with different kinds of plasters or the techniques what we learn. This is a traditional finger plaster of Ladakh, but used in a certain way that it feels like a woven fabric. This is a timber structure for a resort in Sabu, where we are trying to work with portal frames, and the whole idea is like a nomadic tent. The structure can be assembled and also like dismantled and taken to somewhere else without using any nails and all. It's completely on joineries. This is one of a dining pavilion which we have done in Saspol. So the idea over here is in Ladakh you generally see a grid of roof which is always orthogonal, and here we are trying to use a diagonal weaved kind of a structure where the load transfers and everything goes along that alignments. This is a thin glass project. We work a lot with passive solar designs, and on the ground floor you see a rammed earth structure, and the upper floor is adobe with plastered walls. So this house, even in -25, it stays at around +15 inside, and the whole structure is completely with earthen materials, yeah, and dry stone masonry foundation. We work with a lot of indigenous ways of working with landscape with the kind of materials there are. This is one of the swimming pool we have designed and built near Sindhu Ghat, and yeah, it's like a just using natural stones which are available, not using really RCC for the whole construction that ways. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Julie, everybody. Thank you, SAF, Royal Enfield, and Monisha for having me here today. I'm Lachik. I was born in Leh, but I didn't have the opportunity to grow up there. I studied in Ooty, and then I moved to Delhi, where I did my IT engineering. And then I was working as a game developer in Tokyo for some time, and then I moved back to Delhi. And in 2017, I decided to quit my job and move to Leh. So I am a case of reverse migration in a way. And so I did grow up very disconnected from my own land, but every year we would visit, as kids, we would visit our grandparents and great-grandparents and the extended family. And when I moved back in 2017, I realized I knew nothing about my own place, my own culture. So I spent a lot of time just exploring Ladakh, and Leh, which is now sort of the capital of the new Union Territory, was my village. And my memories of Leh as a child, that sort of didn't exist anymore in the region. And I realized a lot of indigenous practices, as we all know, were disappearing. So I wanted to do something a little more impactful, and I saw great potential in using tourism as a medium to bring about some change and preserve these practices. So this was our ancestral home in Tukcha. Initially I wanted to restore it, but structurally we couldn't because it was built by 4 different generations. But this building was my source of inspiration. You can go to the next slide. So this is just the front face of the place. So Dolkhar is a boutique stay in Leh, and we've used traditional techniques of construction. It's only made of mud, wood, and stone. We worked with about 40 local artisans to do up the interiors, and we've sort of also conceptualized our food around the similar fundamentals of sourcing locally. And we forage from the wild, and we also source from the local farmers, and we try to cater to the global palate, because I truly believe that change is inevitable and things have to evolve, but we need to move forward without abandoning our indigenous practices. So that was the sort of fundamental of the space. And then I think I have 2 more images you could show that. So this is one of the artisans that we work with. He's a metalsmith in Scarcity. So he's done all our latches and locks and even the spoons that we use in the restaurant. But similarly, we've worked with the stone artisan, probably the only stone artisan left in Turtuk, who's hand carved our wash basins, and it took him 2 years to make 16 pieces for us. We work with the local weavers, And this is, yeah, that's just the food. So, yeah, I think that should be good for an introduction. Thank you.
What is Indian motion all about?
Don't say, darling, cause you'll fake it. Don't hide the tears, cause I know you're breaking. All this love and all this pain you've given. All this love and all this pain, you bring them from another world. All this love and all this pain you've given. All this love and all this pain, you bring them from another world. Now the summer lies on my doorstep, and outside there's a light and it's getting bigger, and you know it. All this love, damn right. All this pain and those fine, fine eyes. All this love and all this pain you've given. All this love and all this pain, you bring them from another world. All this love and all this pain you've given. All this love and all this pain, you bring them from another world.
Hello everyone. So I'm actually not used to public speaking. I'm sweating a bit. But anyway, I think the video will, I think, just explain what I do. So how it happened was a series of happy accidents. I didn't plan to do any of this. So I was actually doing IT and software engineering almost like 10 years I worked in Bangalore. Then in between you take a small breaks, you travel to the mountains. I came to Ladakh a few times. And yeah, slowly it kind of, the travel bug got into me, and finally I left my job in 2010. For the next 4 or 5 years, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just like traveling in the mountains. Basically, I enjoy being in the mountains. So I do a lot of hiking, visiting like remote villages. So again, a series of accidents. One time I got stuck in a snowstorm, and my tent was like, it was like a very small tent, which is, I think saw in the video also, like 2 feet tent. It got buried in the snow. Then I left it, abandoned it after two days. I went to a nearby village, took refuge there. Then I saw how they lived there in the village in such a big snowstorm, like 2 feet of snow everywhere. So it was so inspiring to see them. Like so hard, how they live, and still they stay like very happy. They use the resources available to them to live like very happy, very fulfilling lives. And one of the reasons I left my job was to like pursue minimalism, like simple life, to live more with less. And this exactly I saw it happening there in the mountains, in the villages, and that inspired me. So after that, I think it happened in 2017. After that, I've been just like traveling to like these remote villages, remote communities. I try to live with them, spend like maybe every season. So I keep going to the same villages for like 3-4 times, maybe even in a year. I want to see the life across the different seasons to see how they live, and just trying to document all this because, again, things are changing so fast in the mountains. So much development is happening, and anytime a road comes to a village, everything the way of life you saw before the road and after the road is like so different. So yeah, that's my like small kind of contribution to the people of the mountains, just to document how they live, their practices. Yeah, that's it.
I'll speak first. I want to talk first, yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Ikshit. I lead brand strategy for Royal Enfield's social mission, which is part of a foundation, and our mandate is to take projects in the CSR domain. And thanks for having me here. This feels more like a reunion than anything else. All of us have worked closely for a few years now. To introduce our mission, Royal Enfield Social Mission's mandate is to work with 100 Himalayan communities by 2030 in a meaningful way and create resilience in light of climate change. And our other mandate is also to create agents of change. So we want to catalyze the largest rider-led movement in the world, because we believe until we marry these two sort of ambitions, the real change will not happen. We hold a great amount of influence and respect in the riding community, that is our customers, our audience. And it is when, we mobilize them to go out and explore in a meaningful, sustainable manner, is when, we can all come together and bring change, rather than just seeing it from the lens of, a CSR mandate. So that is our mission, and it is deeply rooted in the Himalayan region. That's because many decades ago, Royal Enfield went up the Himalayas, and we say it never came back. So the army started using the motorcycles, and then people took it over, and the riders ever since have been going up and exploring these mountains. So our work actually, is across the region, not just Ladakh. We work across all 13 states and union territories. And the kind of projects we do are built ground up. It's very rare at Royal Enfield that a project comes as to be funded and goes through. We work on ground with the right partners to collaborate, bring projects alive that matter most to the Himalayan communities. And yeah, we're a very, very healthy team of about 50 people in the foundation doing this work and making our hands dirty almost, which is quite unlike CSR landscape in the country. So we'll just see a film where you can explore some of our projects. You can play the film now.
So, thank you everyone for those introductions to the work that you do. We'll now just have some questions, and then afterwards we'll open it up to the audience to ask any questions. So, my first question is to Jigmit Le. So, Jigmit, when him and his wife Jigmit came back to Ladakh in 2010, I think barely a week after they had opened their first shop, Ladakh was hit by a huge flash flood, and it really caused a lot of devastation in the region. A lot of people died. I think over 200 people died. A lot of buildings and construction was hit. So it was also probably not a very fortuitous time to start a business in Leh, because for the next few months everybody was also busy salvaging whatever they could. So I just wanted to ask you, what were your, I mean, obviously your reactions to opening a shop at a time like this, but also what did that teach you maybe about the way, the sort of the weather in Ladakh and how everything is so unpredictable. You work with fibers, but those fibers also come from livestock. You can have one bad winter and a whole flocks of pashmina goats and sheep can die. So how do you kind of balance your business with unpredictability?
Yeah, it was the same day, in fact. 5th August 2010. It was a week later. Morning, we opened up our first store. It was our beginning, beginning of new journey. So in the morning, we opened our store. Everything was, said. By evening, by the time, we were home, we thought, we'll just drive a little bit. By 10, when we came back, we got to know that there's something happened in Bazaar. So, we were a little far, in a sense, 1 kilometer far from the hit zone. So then came to know that, it was in the morning, I came to know it's badly, damaged. Everything was like gone, in a sense, that Leh, if somebody traveled to Leh, you will find Leh Gate. That's the entrance toward Bazaar. That whole area was almost washed out, so many people have died. And my team was new. In fact, some of them were, in fact, like I took them, like initially for the tailoring, for garmenting, I took them from, the mainland. So I was actually, like in the morning, I was looking for them. Where are they? And all the telephones was all, jam. Everything was not working. So it's very bad dream kind of a thing, But somehow that event, that incident really taught us a lesson that okay, you slow down in life. I mean, think about everything. I mean, it's not just like you're running fast. Things. I mean, you being coming back to Ladakh now. Slow down, slow in nature. That's made more firm decision to really make a slow label. And in fact, my all resources, yeah, definitely, it's somehow related to Changtang. uh, Changtang is again very prone to extreme cold temperature. There's lots of things happen now with global warming. Definitely I can hear more. I cannot really help with global warming. It's a global problem. But yeah, definitely from my own perspective, my own from what I can do. Yeah, definitely I can slow down things. I can actually make it simple, fashion label also are very meaningful. I mean, let it be very ethical. Everyone should benefit. Things shouldn't really, spoil environment. Being, being me from Ladakh, such a, fragile ecosystem. At least I shouldn't be the one to really, harm that. That's what I feel. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Faiza, my next question is to you. I mean, Cyril and you have now been working in Ladakh for, you said, close to 10 years now, right? So how do you manage? I mean, you've obviously come from backgrounds where you've also worked where anything you wanted was very, very easily available. and now you come to Ladakh, where sometimes even to get just basic things like even the size of nail that you want, or tools that you might use are difficult. I mean, have you adapted to that, or are you bringing in everything from outside? I mean, what is it that's in your practice?
Yeah, so I think working Ladakh is very interesting because yes, there are because it's a land of high passes and the materials what you get so abundantly in the plains is not available. But how I see is it's like abundance lies in the eyes of the beholder. So I think there is enough which can be used in a certain way, which we try to incorporate in our practice, and we integrate the whatever's available in a more like take it up as a challenge, and then how we design with certain materials or we build with it is then taken forward. And I think also what is very interesting is when you have the certain limitations of these things are not possible, so you don't go after it, but you come up with ingenious ways of developing things further, which I think is a very integral part of our practice. And it gives you a solid focus in what you're building, because like if you are using a single material and you come up with 100 different ways, then it's much more interesting, and like you can work with different possibilities. Having too much on the plate, I think you don't understand the value of the material in a full-fledged way.
Yeah. So Lachik, you mentioned in your introduction that you'd been living in Japan for I think close to a year or maybe more now. So what is it that you've seen in Japan that you think maybe had an influence on you when you came back to Ladakh, and in the way that they live their lives, and how what do you put into practice, and do you see differences between the two cultures, or do you see similarities?
So I think Japan and Ladakh both have historically dealt with access to very limited natural resources, and the geography and the isolation has sort of necessitated innovation to make the most of whatever you have. And even if I compare the architecture, I think Ladakh and Japan both use, wood and stone a lot. The diet is also very seasonal. And Ladakh, as we all know, is, now it's different with better infrastructure, but for the longest time, Ladakh used to be cut off from the rest of the world for at least 5 to 6 months in the winter. And there was a whole process to prepare for those winter months using what you had, especially when it came to food. So there were a lot of culinary practices also that I did find similar in terms of preservating food, fermentation especially, and even sun drying was a very similar practice. But I feel like fundamentally, or the ethos of the cultures do have a lot of similarity. I think Japan also, because they're so prone to earthquakes, there is a fear of nature. And in Ladakh also, we live so close to nature and the mountains and just the landscape. It humbles you down as a human being. So I feel like that is something I found similar. My approach while setting up Dolkar, I don't think I consciously had Japan in mind, but now that it's up and running and a lot of people have asked me about the connection, so maybe now I do realize that subconsciously there was a bit of, my perspective was slightly influenced by their culture. Especially seeing beauty in imperfection, I think that is also something that I probably learned while my stay in Japan. So, yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Savarna. So, I mean, you've been traveling in the land in Ladakh for some years now. You've been seeing a lot in the different seasons, summer, winter especially. What are two practices that stand out for you? When we talk about, scarcity, resources, people living with so little, like you were saying, minimalist. What were two things you really stand out for you?
So I think maybe I'll start with one thing. The main thing that fascinated me about the people. I'm talking about the villages, people living like very far away. It's not the Ladakh everybody sees. So one of the most fascinating things is the relationship between the villagers, the village people, and their animals, especially animals like the yak. Some places have yak, some places have like zoos, like different breeds. So a yak is the most valuable thing anybody can own in a village. It's like your pickup truck in a way. It's like your tractor, and it's also your food source. So so the yaks help the people in moving in all the heavy duty things in the village, like plowing the fields at the beginning of the season. Then they help them in the threshing the barley, and again like a pickup truck. Then you're carrying things, carrying like wood to the village, all that. It can be seen by some people as a form of exploitation, but it's actually a very symbiotic relationship. So people use the yaks for maybe like every time they need them, they'll use them for like a week, 3 days, 4 days, and then they let them free to roam in the mountains. And whenever they need them, they go back to the mountains, search for them. Like 1-2 days it takes for them to even to go search for the yaks, bring them back to the village, get the job done, and again they leave them back to roam free in the mountains. And again during the winter, when it snows, sometimes it snows like 1 feet, 2 feet in the mountains, and the yaks cannot find food for them to eat. The grass they cannot find, it will be buried in the ground. So again the villagers go to the mountains, look for them in the deep snow, and bring them back to the village. They feed them, they keep them in their home for the entire winter. And start of spring, when the grass comes again, I think they use them for plowing, and then they let them free again to go in the mountain. So it's like a very mutually beneficial relationship between the yaks and the people. Again, when we say yaks, I'm talking about the male of the species. The females are the dimos, and the female is the zomo. And it's again even more valuable to the people because it gives them the daily source of nutrition. So only in these villages you have two sources of nutrition. One will be the grains they grow, like barley, peas, and everything. And other is the dairy products, the milk from the dimos, and the various things that the people can create from the milk, like butter, cheese, curd maybe also. And these things people can store. Sometimes they trade also, they get some income, and they use them to light their butter lamps, and they can keep them stored maybe for months together. So it's kind of storing for a winter day or a stormy day. So this relationship is so fascinating, and I'm lucky to be able to see it. So it's amazing.
Thank you. So Ikshit, I think before we talk about Royal Enfield, maybe we could talk a little bit about where you come from and the label that you also run called Quad. So Ikshit also is a fashion designer and has a label. He's been living in New York and London before he also decided to come back to India and come back to Royal Enfield because you had worked with them earlier. So how does that part of your journey and your label also sort of cross with the work that you do for Royal Enfield and the work that you, now through the mission of Royal Enfield's CSR mission? How do these layers overlap, or do they not? Or do you think you bring something with you from having spent 10 years in New York into the work you do in Ladakh, or are there things that you reject also?
Thank you. So yes, I actually started with Royal Enfield in 2011, and I used to head the brand communication. I was a fresh MBA graduate, and all I wanted to be was a CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. And then I turned 30 and I thought, this is not, I'm close to my dream, but this is probably what I don't want. Not entirely what I want. So I took a sabbatical to study fashion. I moved to New York. I studied in London as well. And then I stayed between two cities for a good time until I chose to come back last year And big cities are places of great contradictions, you know. There is so much excess of things until man cannot make those things. So, you know, everything is supersize. But it's also places where the best of creatives converge in smaller circles, and hence, you know, the joy of scarcity and making most of scarcity of things that man cannot recreate actually shines through there. So, you know, whether it's your small studios in Manhattan where, you know, there is no space and everything is expensive and you have to create things, so only really the best comes through. That's what I learned, that, you know, there could be excess all around you, but beyond that it doesn't serve every purpose. You will be limited after a point. Yeah, I mean, that's about the West. But yeah, in my own practice as well, I stick to least and try to make the most. So every collection I do, I work with very limited textiles. I work with cotton poplin. I work with wool suiting. I work with silk organza, and there are probably maybe two more textiles in my vocabulary. And that's season after season. If you introduce color, then it's mostly one color every season, and it's really trying to make the most of what we have. I feel I'm more of a textile manipulator than somebody who does surface work. So we try to really squeeze the concept as much as possible and exhaust all possibilities there are with that material, with that technique, with that color, until, you know, there is no more. And I've been doing this now for 6 years and I have barely scratched the surface. So there is a lot more, and we'll see when there is no more, which I doubt. In terms of coming back to Royal Enfield, I think my ambition with every practice I've ever taken on is to bring access to the work that I do, whether it's art, whether it's fashion, whether it's now CSR. You know, if these things stay in their own reclusive domains, then you're losing on a lot of popular imagination. You will not mobilize, catalyze it into a bigger movement. And especially some of things that we are here to talk about are dear and relevant to everybody in the world. So that's the biggest mandate that I have also set for myself in everything I do, and especially for Royal Enfield, is that it has to be exciting, it has to be engaging, it has to reach out to people that are more than patrons of certain things, and really connect different worlds and catalyze different worlds to come and build things together. That answers.
Thank you. I think we'll have to move on. We don't have much time. So I'm going to talk to Faiza. My next question is for you. We're witnessing a bit of a building boom in Ladakh, and mainly in Leh and in outlying villages, and we see new types of construction coming up. We see Ladakhi aesthetics, whether it's in building practices, methodology. We see new materials coming in. Where do you think some of this is headed, and how do you, as field architects, grapple with this? I mean, do you advocate for new material, against some of this, or do you just go with the flow?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because in Ladakh, or generally any kind of places where there is this, like Ladakh, I think is the cusp of really changing into a very urban, or a very thing which is just copying practices in the plain. But the other problem, what happens in construction in Ladakh, is the vernacular is just understood as a pastiche on RCC buildings. So it's not something where you are actually integrating the practices in your construction. Like the wooden corbelling, which is it's just taken like an ornamentation, and then it is put on an RCC beam with nails, and we see that as a big problem. And when the client comes to us, we really educate the client. We also try to somehow instigate a sort of empathy towards their practices around, because the whole part of practicing in Ladakh is having empathy with the culture, with the construction techniques, and then taking it forward. Because with empathy, it comes to sensitive design, and then it comes to building structures which are part of the localities. So that's a very important uh, way of working for us. And with the new materials which are coming in, like, yeah, if you're building a hospital or something, maybe you need such so many stories of building. But generally for hotels, resort, whether you need, the question is, do you need that? When you have such a small population, you have a very influx of tourists in few months. Just so, yeah, we educate our clients, and we always have this kind of conversations, because I think it's very important for us. And we say no to projects which don't come to mind with our ethics. So we are very firm on what we practice. Yeah.
My next question, following on from that, is for Lachik. So Lachik is also now the head of the Guest House and Hotel Association of Ladakh. And the kind of building that Dolkar is and the kind of practices that you follow are very, very different from what other hoteliers and guest house owners in Ladakh follow. Do you think that there is room for change? There is room for better practices in the sort of tourism industry in Ladakh that are possible to bring in? What do you think?
So when I started Dolkhar and the ancestral home that the photography saw, I think that building, when we had to dismantle it, that was a huge eye opener for me. And because it was only made with mud, wood, and stone, there was no waste that came out. Everything was reused. All the wood was reused in the front building. All the stone went back into the foundation, and the bricks were made of the soil of that area. And we reused everything, and there was no construction debris. And now you see in Ladakh, there's so much of it everywhere. And another thing that I noticed in the hospitality industry when I first moved to Ladakh was there was a sense of pride in imported goods. So, I would go around speaking to hoteliers, and there was a sense of pride in, the tiles being from Italy and the lights being from China. And I wanted to maybe sort of build that sense of pride in local materials as well. And that's when I decided that the place had to be luxury, and I wanted, to sort of prove that local can also be luxury and can be perceived as luxurious. Initially, when I wanted to, use these traditional practices, it was very difficult to find people who knew about these practices. And like Faiza said, most of the buildings that look traditional, they're mostly just claddings, or it's just for the aesthetics. There was no structural purpose of structures like that. And it was very difficult to find resources, and even the local architects, they studied outside Ladakh. So there wasn't much knowledge about local architecture when I started off. And in these 6 years, and I'm sure all of you would agree, there has been almost like this wave of change that has come in, and you see, the younger generation, I feel, is a lot more sensitive towards these things. And you look at young entrepreneurs in various fields, I think they're a lot more conscious about these things. So I do see hope, and I do see that the perspective is definitely changing. It's going to be a slow process, but I do see the change coming. Yeah.
That leads on to my next question. Sorry, I'm hogging the mic. Sorry, that leads on to my next question to Jignit. Sort of, how do you, through the work that you do, whether it's through craft, fashion, how do you think you engage a younger generation? How do you make them more conscious of what they're wearing? Because I think in 2010, before you came onto the scene, there was not a lot of local pride in a younger generation wearing Ladakhi dress, and I'm mainly talking about the Leh area. You actually had the Amat Soxpa, which is the women's society in Leh. They had to have they started a fining system, and if you didn't come to your monastic festivals or your big ceremonies dressed in Ladakhi dress, they would fine you because they wanted to encourage people to wear Ladakhi dress, though I don't know if that's the right way of doing it. But in the sort of last 20 years now, since not only you have come on the scene, but so many other brands have come, we've seen this whole thing change. And I also feel like you, Lachik said, I feel the youth is really the custodians today of Ladakhi culture. And I think they will really take it forward. So how does that come through? I mean, do you see that happening also? I mean, how do you feel?
Yes, of course. After we been coming, there was a period when, this was not really talked much. There was hardly any Ladakhi, any sort of, brand in terms of food or a restaurant also. There was hardly, there was few restaurant which is non-Ladakhi, they used to run it. There was no concept or there was no consciousness behind it. So, but later, once a young generation they started picking up, entrepreneurship and everything. Like Lachikli also with the boutique hotel, and there's a few people from food processing background, and we were in the beginning, okay, branding, trying to really tell people that why this brand and why what we talk about in this brand. Overall consciousness and everything, now with this younger generation which is coming as of now, they are more sensible to really understand. They grab it more, they find it, the market now, maybe at that point of time when I was starting, it was clueless basically. Now they see, your product is more valuable when you actually tell them a nice story. I mean, you are rooted, you are connected in that way, and you bother about, your own environment where you are living. That was, I think, it's in the right track.
And that leads me to Savarna. I mean, these videos that you make, the people who follow you on Instagram, I mean, who are you making them for? I think that's one question I'd like to ask. I mean, who is your audience? Is it the younger generation? And do you think that they're there to make people more conscious and more mindful of what's out there and how they use resources?
I think the answer won't be what you're expecting. I make them for myself. This is kind of the journey. For me, it's like something that I want to look back on, reflect on my life. It's kind of, I think it's there. So I think the main focus is to do things that satisfy my curiosity. I go to places where I feel curious about with the people. So I actually don't create content for the algorithm. So that's why all my channels are not very popular, because it's not for the algorithm. But I do understand what you mean. And personally, I don't like the term influencer, but whatever we do, whatever we show in our videos, it influences a lot of people. So I think it's very important to show the right message and how to treat the environment. Especially in these days, I think the last 4-5 years, I've been seeing people have so many 4x4 vehicles. They come on the motorcycle, thousands of motorcycles. They travel around Ladakh, which is fine. But again, many parts of Ladakh, we have these open plains where it's so easy for people. It's so tempting for people to just go off the road, and then they go exploring. It's they go on adventures. So a lot of these content creators also, they do this because it it gets them the views, and that again influences other people to follow the same. So it is something I think everybody should be more responsible about. And yeah, one more thing, more than the content creators, I think I would like corporations also to be very responsible about this fact, because somebody makes an ad for a car or a bike, they immediately show people going on these pristine environments. They do donuts in the landscape, they go across streams splashing water. Again, it's promoting a message that you buy our stuff, then we can just do the same things. So I think it's something to be mindful about. Yeah, thanks.
That leads very well into my next question to Ikshit. So I think,
It's a
Royal,
trap.
it's I didn't set it. He did. So I think, Royal Enfield's social mission is to leave each place better, right? So I'm sure it's not easy. So how do you sort of decide, how you want to go about this in the projects that you choose, the partners that you support, and I guess in a way in your own mission statement that Royal Enfield has, what does it set for itself?
Right. So it is really a inside out approach. We don't go as outsiders looking for solutions for communities or other people. We want to work with the community to figure what are the gaps and what are the solutions that matter most to them. Hence, when you look at the kind of projects we do, some of them you saw in the film, right from working on ice hockey development in Ladakh to textile project across Himalayas to helmet safety through art. They sound like a portfolio of varied kind of things, but essentially this is what is important to the traveling community and to the socio-cultural economic fabric of the Himalayas, and hence these projects. So first is really choice of the right project, and second is the right partner to work on the projects. Like Faiza said, like she would not take a project if it doesn't, qualify as per her mandate. And we have partners who question us more than we question them. I mean, we have dealt with a lot of questions on why should we work with you rather than you wanting to work with us. And hence we have, support right from a LAMO to a UNESCO, to many other partners in conservation field, in textile field, in responsible tourism field. And that really is the inside out approach that we want to follow, that you need to work with the right people and develop the right projects. And I mean, it's not commonly known, but less than 3% of the national CSR spends happen in the Himalayan region. And that's why we also thought that because we have enjoyed so much patronage and hospitality from the community, that when it's time to give back, it is this region that we hold dear to our hearts, and this is where we will work. So everything sort of has to come together in a really deep yet organic manner. It can't be orchestrated or cannot be. So we don't really typically work like a typical funder. I think that's what's essential.
Thank you. And I think we can open this up to questions from the audience. If anyone has any questions they'd like to ask at the back there. Is there a mic?
I can speak loudly. First of all, just thank you so much for sharing your story. Very, very inspirational. What I wanted to ask was, while individually, we do a lot of this good work, and I think people with any small amount of consciousness, we all balk at what we've kind of done to the environment around us. Made a mess of a lot of things. So my question was to make it scalable. The innovations, the practices that you've built, is there a way you're able to influence policy with it? Because if you're able to do that, then perhaps the next generation of people, the next generation of designer, architects, next generation of Ladakhis, next generation of travelers, they will be able to follow a certain framework. Because unless policy backs this up, these are great initiatives individually, but how do we sort of scale them? So for example, Faiza, as an architect, are you able to influence the town planners and the administration to say, can we build these practices as default? A lot of places in Europe, for example, have codified how you can build buildings. Or to Lakchik, are you able to influence the Ministry of Tourism to say that, look, these are certain sustainable practices, can we sort of codify them? Yeah. Because then, we'll have a sort of a sea change across the. Thank you.
So what I would the process of influencing or making a change in the policy development is very slow, and I think one of the important parts is part of it is that the consciousness also should come along with the people around you, the locals. And then when that happens, then it will reach to the policymakers that the locals or the community is demanding this kind of a change. Because what happens till the time the community is not conscious of the decision, the policymakers, it will be like a order put on them, you know. So it has to be within. Through our practice, we try hard to educate and, you know, do. And recently we did a project with Ladakh for it's Borda, basically is the waste management agency, where so all the waste from the tourism or plastic, whatever comes to Ladakh, Borda actually makes it into these compressed bricks, and you know that's how they try to manage it. But what we did, we made an earthen Pasasola building for them, for the people who are working there. And so they were very happy with it, because otherwise they would have given out a tender, it would just have come up with an RCC building which is completely not suitable. So yeah, I mean, I feel more people should push towards it for the change to happen. But yeah, like, it will eventually.
So I've been a part of the All Ladakh Hotel and Guest House Association for over 4 years, and now I'm sort of heading it. We have so Ladakh is a newly formed union territory, and although it's been 5 years, we're still in the transition phase, and all our policies mostly are still in the draft stage. That includes the tourism policy, the building bylaws, even the industrial development policy. Unfortunately, what has also happened is, because we're a union territory without legislature, a lot of the central policies have directly been sort of imposed on the region, and Ladakh, because the landscape and everything is so unique, and most of the policies, compliances don't make sense for a place like Ladakh. So there's definitely a need for more region-specific structures in place, and we have been advocating for it. We try to also work with the people on ground and try to get a sense of, especially for the building bylaws. I think that's going to change a lot of things for Ladakh. But currently it's in the draft stage, and we definitely need more active participation from the local communities to influence it. But there is hope, because it's in the draft stage. Yes.
Hello, audible? Yeah. No, it's audible for us. It's on. Thank you for the wonderful discussion. I'm Padma Rigzin. I'm also from Ladakh, and I am a social anthropology student. Oh, it's all right. My questions are away from practical policy related matters to more ideational level. One is, will sustainable practices, this is question for Lachik onwards towards all the way to Monisha, will sustainable practice always remain sustainable? How long it will remain, even if all the materials are sourced locally? Keeping in context of the changing climate, keeping that in mind, and also booming all sorts of industry, not only tourism, all sorts of economic practices rising in Ladakh. So that's one. Second would be to Irshit Pandey. I'm interested in what Royal Enfield Foundation feels about the idea of remoteness. What do I mean by this is, Saravana Kumar pointed out that he goes to remote places. So I do not mean particular remote places. How do you see it? Why I'm asking this question is, ultimately Royal Enfield is
it provides means to end remoteness. In that sense, but the idea of remoteness still persists. So in that sense, I am asking that. Thank you.
So I'll start with your first question and then we'll pass it. Your question on sustainability. I think fundamentally we often only think of the environment and the ecology when we speak of sustainability, but the local communities and the local economy play a vital role as well. And the three have to move together. COVID taught us that when the local economy collapses, you don't have the luxury to think about the environment, and that happened with the hospitality industry as well. There was no financial support, and Ladakh's economy is completely driven by tourism. And we had so many stakeholders that were not able to repay their loans. And we had, in fact, before COVID, sort of reached a point where we thought of implementing a cap on the number of rooms, and people were, sort of on board with a lot of things that we wanted to implement. And then COVID happened, and post that, we couldn't speak about the environment or the ecology. So the local community and the local economy has to be taken into consideration if we want sustainability to last. It's not just the environment. And the local communities have to, I think, be empowered, and they have to be put first when we speak about tourism and the benefits of tourism and even shaping tourism. It has to be in the, the priority has to be given to local communities, and I think that should be the approach.
I'm going to just speak for a lot of the sort of maybe craft-based businesses that run out of play, including Jigmeet Coutiers, but also others like Lena or Nomadic Woolen Mills, or there are so many of them, you know them. I think sometimes, like Jigmeet said, even in the beginning, when he came back to Ladakh, he was asked whether he would make school uniforms and, army gear, and he said no to that. And I see that with a lot of these brands is they do get approached by big companies from the outside, take it like a Zara or whatever, even an Hermes or anything like that. But they all realize that they're very small niche businesses. They cannot make in the thousands. That's just not possible, because so far, crafts in Ladakh are handmade. It's hand spun, hand woven, hand carded, and I think people want to keep it that way, at least people who are in the business currently, because they realize that there is a beauty in that, and there is also a sustainability in that. So I think people are not really looking to scale up big businesses. You don't have the resources to scale up big businesses also, even your artisans are a limited population. Look at, for instance, Thanka painting, or your metal workers from Chilling. They're very, very few and far between. Your potters in Likir, for instance. Why is it only 2 or 3 potters? Why is it not 50 people working in pottery out of Likir? So I think, these are questions to ask, and I think these are what continue the crafts today also, but also continue to make them small and sustainable, at least the way I see them. Would you like to say anything?
I'll move to your second question. So, Royal Enfield is not about getting from point A to point B. It has never been. It is really about, no matter how stereotypical it may sound, it's really about the ride, and why people ride may differ for everybody. So it's about that connection that man, machine and terrain has in together. So nowhere it is the fastest motorcycle to take you somewhere, or the most comfortable motorcycle to take you somewhere. But somewhere, if it fits in your scheme of things or your idea of exploration, then it could be a great ally to take that journey on. So Royal Enfield doesn't really think of places as remote or not remote. And it is certainly not about connecting people to places, but it is really about that journey that people want to take. And yes, some of them or most of them could be to places that are remote, if that answers your question.
Jule. You all have been very, very inspiring, and I feel a deep connect to Ladakh. And it's been 6 years that it has become a every year ritual for me as well to go and spend 3 months there. My question is to Sir Sarvana, because I am somebody as well who travels by bicycle, and it's been 6 years of exploring in Ladakh on bicycle, and remoteness does speak to me. As a creative person, I often have blogs around creating content, especially when you share that you create content, but for myself, for yourself. I think it's a personal question, but I think it will really help me. How do you come out of self-doubt, creative blocks, in the times when everybody is trying to push you towards losing, I think, authenticity for trends and reels and things? I think it will really help me.
Uh, I don't know if I can help. I think it boils down to each of our personal philosophies. So when I left my job, I think I had a nice, high-paying job. So then I could see myself, stuck in a cycle that you want more, then you need more. You want to earn more, then you spend more. So it's kind of a cycle which is like never ending. So I wanted to break away from that cycle. So one thing, it's kind of my personal philosophy, is do anything, but not expecting the results of it. So I do something because I want to do it. It's not because my videos will get like millions of views or I'll get like so much money. I think that's my driving force. I don't expect anything out of them except for my own personal, satisfaction. So that keeps me going. So even if a video doesn't do well, people don't watch it, it doesn't matter, because I enjoyed being in the place. I enjoyed meeting the people, spending time with them. So I think that's all that matters. I don't know if it helped you or not. So,
I hope I'm audible. Thank you so much for this session, and it's very interesting to know that there's a lot of meaningful work going on. And something I could understand was that all of your projects, all of your practices are very central to the idea of care and is built on infrastructure of care, if I can frame it like that. My question is about the partnerships. It's open to the entire panel, about the partnerships that have formed in the course of your practices, and not the young generation, not the people who are going to take over after you or the policymakers, but people who you are working with. How have they sort of reacted, responded, and adapted to what I understood as a certain reimagination of their ancestral knowledge and techniques to better cater to the work that you're doing? And how was it for them to adapt to it?
Hi, so I'd like to give example of Pale House in Pei, which we conserved. So it's a house built incrementally. So part of it is built like 250 years back, then 100 years back. The currently it's owned by three Memele's, like three grandfathers, and the process of working in conservation there was really enriching and humbling for us itself, because the whole village was involved. Like every day the villagers will come visit the place when the workers are working. They would provide food, like vegetables, milk, and there was a sense of pride. And one of the Memele, the eldest one, he really doesn't talk, but whenever he'll come, you can see that there's a gleam in his eyes that they left the house and they never wanted to break it, but they didn't know what to do with it. And conserving and seeing like it is like an educational place, I think it really they really talk about to people with a lot of pride that this is what happened to my house, and this is how it should be done. And like my ancestors, like my future generations will come and see this is what Ladakhi vernacular or the Ladakhi local construction was, because slowly that is just getting lost. So yeah, I think connecting with the villages, and then a lot of younger people also then come and visit because their grandfathers are saying then they sometimes come in and they share stories. In this room we have done this, you know, so it's all nostalgia and, you know, good vibes. Yeah.
Um, yeah, with my practice, it's like from the very fiber itself, I'm connected. Like I've been working with like nomads, and then for spinning also. Like it's all local women. We have been like doing a really nice thing, and then with the viewers, I spend most of my time. Like my wife takes care of a garment, and there also is a team of like all locals and all. But with me, like I take care of textile part, so I have all women except for me. Like I'm the only man. So spending time with them, having lunch, everything is like altogether different experience, and more or less, like they themselves really get a feeling of connected with what they are doing. Like they have like over the period, like these three looms out of like which this the thaksha, the foot loom, which is commonly practiced, but other looms are like quite it's been lost in a sense, like, because people have migrated from Changtang to Leh, so hardly they like have a like this accessibility or market to it. So but then I do like practice all three, and then there's lots of like storytelling, and I get lots of knowledge. In fact, like that storytelling is so beautiful. In like one of her book, Living Fabric, I can see it every day. Like I can listen to that myths and storytellings and everything. So it's very much very caring and nice thing.
Yeah, I just want to say, so through the work that we do at Lamo, we've had similar experiences like Faiza and Cyril have had also when we were restoring the two buildings we are currently located in, which are like 400 years old. But in the projects, some of the projects that we do with Royal Enfield, which are actually research and documentation based projects, we work with local knowledge partners in the village, and also to actually do the field work. We look at both tangible and intangible heritage. We are measuring monuments. We're identifying places. We are writing up. So a lot of the younger people we work with are from the village, and we do training workshops with them. So we train them in research methodology, photography, GPS mapping. And a lot of them come back to us and they said, I didn't know this about my village, or I heard this story from my grandfather yesterday, or, oh, I saw this object in my house, it's from Sinkiang. And so it's really nice when you start doing that and they start coming back to you. So I think it's really, a lot of the younger people in Ladakh have gone outside to study, and like Lachik, they're coming back and they're re-engaging with their cultures, with their grandparents. And I think it's really nice when you can also facilitate some of that.
Yeah, I just actually wanted to. I mean, I'm really inspired by the leadership sort of roles that a lot of you have taken up yourselves in your different disciplines. But I just wanted to hear anyone's thoughts about something that the inevitability of connecting roads to isolated places, like in Goa, just, to take a reference, we have like a habit, some of us, to not disclose locations and to definitely not show certain secrets like waterfalls, because what ends up happening is there's a large tirade of people who go in that direction. So maybe it's good for business, and maybe some things work, but there's no going back for the people around over there, so since we know this, and since you're at such a brilliant position right now to speak, because it's not yet happened over there, but the garbage is mounting over there, so there's no going back. So, I mean, I would like dream of you becoming a powerful council, because I just wanted to know, like, reality of policy is not the same as the reality that you're describing, like the sixth schedule, which Sonam Wangchuk is talking about. that is something so critical for all of the things that you guys are talking about, you know. So I just wanted your perspective because it could be inspiring maybe for people in Goa, you know. There are so many designers and architects and resort owners and social media influencers who don't address this part of it, although they appreciate all of the benefits. You know, they know that the crafts are dying, they know the waterfall is pretty, you know, and the food is local. But if you can just,
I don't know if I'm the right person. Maybe it should be. Yeah. But so, I mean, I hear you, but we don't live in a museum. We live in a place where the world is changing, where roads are going to be built. You can't stop them. People who live in villages want the road. They want accessibility. They want electricity. They want, gas. I mean, we all have it. So, why should we don't have a right to say that, the road stops there. um, I think what we can do is we can be catalysts to make people aware of what is there. I mean, like you, I also keep certain remote places off. I like to keep certain places off the radar, and I know there are places in Ladakh that Ladakhis themselves keep off the tourism radar. Whether they come onto the scene 10 years from now, they might, but right now they're not. I mean, in the same way, like Goa's quarries and things. What it was, deep river beds and all for swimming in the monsoons. Were not really known by a lot of people until Google Maps started showing you the way there. So, if Google Maps shows me the way there to that sort of remote village that Savarna's been to, there's nothing I can do about it. You know, but I think it is research and documentation that's very important, so that even what is lost is still known about. It's talking to the older generation now, especially those who are custodians of the local knowledge. When we did this project with Royal Enfield for the last 2 years, and we were documenting one side of the Nubra belt that goes towards the Siachen glacier. There's not a lot of literature on this area, and we were really lucky that we managed to meet a lot of elderly people who are still around and who could still share with us their stories about the Silk Route trade that came through this way, the Yarkhandis that lived here, the old sites that had also were now in ruins. So I think I myself, I see research and documentation as being very important to Ladakh, because it is at this cusp of change. We do have, now that Ladakh is UT, there's a lot of good that's come in, but there's a lot of, whatever destruction we see that might come in, now with, these minerals being found in Ladakh. I mean, we've always known they existed, but they were never mined. But if mining laws change in Ladakh, then, the whole landscape will start changing. So you can, just do what you have to do in your own way. And, sometimes protesting is not always the way to move forward. It's more like understanding and educating people.
Yeah, if I may also add, I think it's also got to do a large deal with working with the next generation as well, the youth, really, right? Because they are the protectors of the land where they come from, and you can't stop development or modernization, but you can do it at the terms of the people who own the land, the communities. An example is the Responsible Tourism Fellowship that we do in partnership with Green Hub, where youth from region they apply and are selected, and they pitch responsible tourism plans for their villages, for their region, and then they develop it from ground up through this partnership. So it's, I think, really programs like this where you're working on documenting, where you're working on developing methods which are more inside out rather than outside in, is what would certainly make things better.
Yeah, I'll just add a quick point to that. Yeah. So with roads, we often forget that these remote villages also need access to healthcare and education. We still have children in villages that walk for hours to get to schools. So roads, I think, from their perspective, I don't think it's fair for us to maybe say that there shouldn't be roads built to remote regions. but at the same time, we must, I mean, change is inevitable. So I think we must evolve without entirely abandoning indigenous practices, but we have to find a way to sort of balance it out and take the good from it and move forward. I think that's the only way.
Maybe I'll just add a little bit, a practical, perspective of having lived in these remote villages. So actually, these villages are dying. So it looks pretty in all the videos, but there is no youth in the villages. Everybody you see will be in their 40s, in their 50s, because children, they go to study and they don't come back to the villages. And the people, they leave their fields barren because they make more money working as laborers, like building roads. They go to the BRO camps, they work there. Yeah, okay. Instead of, growing barley. So, but if a road comes to these villages, because they have so much land and they have so much water also, so they will grow peas. So they make a good income. Maybe their young people will come back to the village, take up agriculture. Otherwise, agriculture is kind of, it's not a, how do you say, the word is not coming. It's not, like the young people don't like to do agriculture. It's not, oh, suddenly I'm stuck. Okay. So it's kind of, I think road will make a lot of, and the village I go to, like till 1 year back, they didn't have a phone connection. So if somebody falls sick in the village, the government will provide a helicopter. But to call for help, they have to walk to the Puktar monastery, which is like 25 kilometers. They have to walk like 6 to 8 hours to call for the helicopter. Then they have to wait for the helicopter to come maybe the next day. So everybody wants roads, even though personally I don't want to see the change happening, but it's practicality the village people need, because we have to take their aspirations in mind also. So mainly what I want to see is the villages, to continue to thrive. If the young people leave and they don't come back, it's like maybe in another generation, like 20, 30 years, they'll all be empty. So.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I think we will.
Thank you, panelists. That was really wonderful and very insightful. As I mentioned before, this exhibition is on at Samba Square. If you've not had the opportunity to look at it yet, please do go and check it out. Thank you.